ending mass incarceration. This is a monthly gathering of ending in mass incarceration and the death penalty, which is part of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom US and advancing human rights. So yeah, often George Friday is our moderator here, or Teresa, and but they've asked me to do it, and we are lucky to have a state rep here with us, Chip Troiano.
Troiano, correct.
So what we want to do first is just go around and introduce ourselves, say where you're from, and then we'll jump into prison issues in Vermont and the possibility of moratorium. So, okay, I'm from Burlington, Vermont. I am part of the Burlington branch and longtime member of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and hoping to go down to New York next month to the Commission on the Status of Women, which is an extraordinary and wonderful event to attend, which was kind of canceled the last couple of years. So Cheryl, tell us who you are.
My name is Cheryl Durish. I started a nonprofit called Step Out. We go into the women's prison and we facilitate a curriculum of life skills and entrepreneur skills. We bought the curriculum from Mercy Corps in Portland, Oregon. It's evidence and trauma informed and reduced recidivism by 40% in Oregon. We've done one pilot class that had a lot of interruptions and we lost momentum. It was during COVID. We got a contract with the Department of Corrections in 2020, a no-cost contract. And I'm now currently fundraising to do a second class for 20 women. We offer a $500 monetary incentive, and the class has a lot of rigor. It's 70 hours and almost 6 months.
That's fascinating. So you offer $500 to each person who takes part in it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
commits to it.
If they come to all the classes and do their homework and finish their business plan and transition plan, then they get $500. Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's
We
fascinating.
had 5 graduates last year.
Huh. All right, Joan Goddard, what are you up to?
Hi, Joan. I'm from the Joan Goddard, as she said, and as it says on the screen. I'm in the San Jose, California branch of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. We say WILP sometimes, and have been concerned about mass incarceration and the death penalty for many years, since my husband was back in our very, very, very young days of our early 20s in prison for draft refusal, and have not done as much as most people in this group in the meantime, but am learning a lot and also connecting with other people here in the South San Francisco Bay Area. Thank you.
Great, thank you. George, will you say something for us?
I absolutely will. Good afternoon. I'm George Friday. I'm going to share what has become our practice on these subcommittee meetings to tell you my name, George Friday, my branch, Southern Piedmont branch in North Carolina, and one good thing. The one good thing for me this week is I'm heading to a retreat with my Move to Amend pals. We haven't had a retreat since 2019, and it was somewhere in the Sacramento area, and we're going to be in Pensacola starting Thursday. So that's a good thing. Thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm. And move to amend the Constitution to get rid of money going to corporations in the elections, more or less, right?
Mhm.
For people who don't know.
That is
Okay,
correct.
yeah. Teresa, how are you? Or maybe I shouldn't ask.
I don't know why you shouldn't. Well, Robin, I hope you move the meeting along. You know, we have a 1 hour kind of hard stop. And I am Teresa Elamine, and I'm the convener of this subcommittee. And I'm glad that Robin was willing to facilitate today. I'm the organizer of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch based in Columbus, Georgia. And we'll be celebrating our second anniversary on March 18th with a Phenomenal Woman Award. But I'll just say my one good thing, which is really important because my landlord is evicting me. And I negotiated 6 months of free rent. But because I have so much stuff, it's going to cost a lot to move. So the one good thing is that my credit union today approved a $5,000 loan for me to move my 9,000 pounds of furniture to my new luxury apartment. It's going to cost me $600 more a month than I've been paying for 5 years. So the rents are just crazy everywhere. And so I'm working on affordable housing justice. And so we have a new subcommittee as a part of AHR that's dealing with affordable housing justice. And I'm the current convener of that subcommittee, along with the UN Decade Reparations Subcommittee. So
Okay,
that's
thank-
it.
oh, good. All right, that's quite a report. Diane. Just, your
Yeah,
name?
sorry. It takes me, sometimes I hit it and it doesn't go, and then I hit it and then it goes twice. Anyway, so hi, sorry, I'm a little late because this computer anyway, I had problems, but here I am. And I was supposed to say something good that's going to happen this week.
And where you're from?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm Diane Blay. I live in Fairfax, Virginia, and I am secretary of WILF US. And I just got back from Quebec and survived minus 40-degree weather and being out in the cold, and I'm kind of happy to be home again.
Great, great. Okay, Samantha. Just,
Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm in the Southern Piedmont branch in North Carolina. I'll share a good thing that going from Teresa's housing issue, North Carolina, the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, just increased a program that provides part of the down payment for homeowners from $30,000 to $80,000. So there is an application process, but it's a really important issue, and it's a really good, helpful thing that will get more people in homes.
sounds good, yes. Philip, how are you?
Wonderful. Thank you. My name is Philip Cole, and I belong to the San Francisco branch of WOLF. And I once attended the Squires Club in San Quentin, which since has morphed itself into Scared Straight. It was not scary when I attended as a teenager, and I think it's a very important program to help you stay away from the prison pipeline. Thank you.
Well, great. Okay, so everyone said hello except Chip, and I want to thank him very much for being here. He sent a response to what was sort of a mass inundation of his email with people who were responding to the Free Her town meeting that happened last week. And they, just go here and click there and you will send a message to all of your state representatives and so on. So, and Chip is the only person who responded, and so I immediately invited him on this call because he serves on the military and what committee?
No, I just have been transferred to the Corrections and Institutions Committee, in
Oh,
which I'm
okay.
vice chair.
Okay, so he is really deep in the in the meditations that are going on at the State House as to how to deal with our terrible women's prison. And, I hope this is relevant to all of you who are not from Vermont, because that's the key thing. It's one thing to be supporting freeing all women from the prison as a goal, but what is really happening in our state houses, and what are the ways we can push them along? So if you could explain to folks what you're doing and your perspective on this, and what chance we have of having an impact.
Sure, Robin. I am Chip Troiano, and I'm in my 9th year in the Vermont House of Representatives. I served 4 years on the Human Services Committee, and then 4 years on the General Housing and Military Affairs Committee, of which I was the vice chair. And this year I was transferred to the Corrections and Institutions Committee, which I am also vice chair of. So when I received these emails that came to me, I responded to 2 of them. They came into my iPad, and I can't get that thing to copy and paste my responses. So when I saw Robin and I recognized your name, I decided that I would respond to you, and hopefully you could spread the word. So what we're experiencing in Vermont is a very rundown correctional institution for women in Burlington, Vermont. And so the line that we face here is whether or not it's inhumane treatment. It's inhumane conditions for the 100 women that are presently incarcerated in Vermont. That being said, the women's correctional facility is the next thing on the agenda in corrections here in Vermont, because that facility is so run down that even renovations are likely not to make it much better. So in the conversations that we've been having in possibly having to construct another correctional center for women, first of all, I would say that we have not located a site yet. There are 2 or 3 possibilities. The first thing that has to happen is a site has to be approved and obtained. And we're still having trouble finding property for it. So as I responded to you, Robin, we are at least, the email that I received asked for a 5-year moratorium on building correctional centers. That is happening here in Vermont automatically. We have not, it is taking probably about 5 years or better to go from a planning stage in which we are now for the women's facility to actual construction and completion. So we are probably 5 years out at least from a new women's correctional center. We have, however, determined that we need to focus on reentry into the community. And we took some testimony last week from Maine, from one of the directors of the Department of Corrections in Maine. They have just constructed a women's facility with about 100 beds for reentry. And it was really impressive. We've also spoken about other countries such as Norway, which has a much more subtle approach to incarceration, and has better results as a result, in doing so, where both staff and inmates are much more content. There's less conflict, and people and recidivism rates seem to go down. So this facility in Maine is set up like a dormitory rather than a prison. There are no locking steel doors, sliding steel doors. They're wooden doors. The doors to the rooms do not lock, but the facility is secure. So the outside doors are. It's located in a more or less a meadow, which has a fair amount of outdoor space. The women go out to work oftentimes, almost every day, for most of them, almost every day. And it's just a much more humane treatment, and it really relaxes the inmates and the staff to a point where they are much more prepared to go back into their communities. So I think when we see a new women's facility, we will see an emphasis on such a reentry program, so that we can follow a much gentler approach, a softer approach, if you will, and hopefully reduce our recidivism rates and make things a lot better for people who are incarcerated. As I wrote in my response, I think it's difficult to think in terms of not needing incarceration for anyone. I started the second diversion program here in Vermont and Caledonia County around 1974, I guess it was. And so I've been a long time a believer in restorative justice, and I served on that diversion board for many years. In fact, traveling in New Zealand, we met two women that New Zealand does restorative justice for everything, including homicides, where they actually will bring victims' families into the jails and meet with the convicted murderer and work things out. So I get it. I understand that, and I think that at this point we're heading in the right direction in Vermont as far as corrections goes. And what we want to see, how we want to see inmates and staff alike be able to maintain order and to take a softer approach, because the mental health of both inmates and staff right now in the men's facilities is critical. There's about a 30% suicidal ideation for both staff and inmates, and we can't recruit staff. The staff are working way too many hours, way too many days, and it's one of the more difficult jobs that you can have, is being locked in a lot with the doors locked behind you for that many hours a day and that many days a week. And that interaction between staff and inmates is critical in order to have safer and more productive correctional institutions if we're going to have them. And I understand that folks here really would like to rely entirely on restorative justice. So would I. But I worked for 35 years in the public defender's office in northeastern Vermont, here where I live, and I'm very familiar with how things work in the criminal justice system. But that's a whole other story. So that's what's happening here. I thought I would share it with you folks. And coming off 4 years on the General Housing and Military Affairs Committee, I'd have to say to Teresa, I am the lead sponsor right now of a bill that I'm about to submit that will put a moratorium on no-cause evictions. Therefore, landlords cannot just evict someone from their apartment for no reason at all. And that's happening right now. And we're hearing there's about a 50% increase in those no-cause evictions since the executive order here in Vermont was rescinded and let evictions begin again. So we really need to consider keeping people in housing, and their housing, and creating new housing units. And we also have what we call a missing middle, which is funding for down payments for middle income families in order to help them getting into starter homes, which is what they used to be called, and are still way overpriced at this point, but assistance in getting down payments for folks that might be able to buy a house, who are working and might be able to buy a house. So that's some of the other things I'm involved in. And, so I could take any questions or whatever at this point, but that's kind of where we're at here in Vermont. We are 5 years from the building the next correctional center.
Yeah, okay, Cheryl, you have a question.
I do. Do you have, are you waiting until you build the next building before you start with reentry programs? Or do you have any plans to, because we have a plan that we're a strategy, entrepreneurship as a reentry strategy, and I have to fundraise for it. I have a contract, but it's a no-cost contract.
Mhm.
And so my second half of that question is figuring that you probably don't have funding for programming is, have you heard about social impact bonds and how they work to pay for programming in the prison?
No, I have not heard of social impact bonds. The capital budget that we prepare in our committee is all bonded, and so I have not heard of that. The women's facility currently in Burlington would not accommodate such a or the type of reentry program that we would like to facilitate actually at this point. So right now, the talk is that it would be part of the new facility for women.
So
and I
I
don't,
mean, that 5 years, I mean, women are getting out and going back. I mean, I saw it with 2 in my class, so
yeah.
I mean, 5 years, and we're paying $80,000 a year to incarcerate. So quickly, a social impact bond has been approved by legislature in 13 states, and we do the fundraising. If we can prove 2.5 years out that our women, we reduced recidivism by 40%, which is a savings to society, legislature pays our donors back with interest, and then we go back and do the program again.
And tell me the name of this again. Social
Impact bond. And I can talk to you later after this, because I could get an organization that does these, and
Okay.
they have a video, so we could get a group together and present the video.
Okay.
Robin, you have his email. Can I email you after this, Chip?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for your good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I should just add that for those of you who are not from Vermont, that this time around, we the Democrats and the progressives have I think it's called a supermajority, isn't it?
Yep. Super
Yeah.
majority. We
Yeah,
have Democrats have 104 seats and progressives have 5 seats. So we've got 109 seats out of 150 seats in the in the House.
Mhm.
So that is called a super majority, Robin. And
So
we're
that
hoping we'll be able to
that
use it.
sounds fantastic, except for the fact that the governor is a Republican.
Yeah,
He keeps getting reelected, and he uses a veto pretty frequently, so.
he does.
Too
it's,
frequently.
Too
Robin
frequently.
Diane had questions in the chat too.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, Diane Blaze is asking, how much are the women paid when they work?
I don't know that.
Mm,
I couldn't tell you. It's not prison work, so it's outside work. So I'm assuming that it would be at least minimum wage. It is not prison work that is for pennies.
They do work in the kitchens, and they make like, I think it's like $75 a month. It's not much.
In Maine?
No, in Vermont. I'm in Burlington. I'm in Vermont.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought you were asking about Maine. Maine, the women go out and work in commercial jobs. So that's that I assume is minimum wage. You're correct. In Vermont, whatever work is done within the prisons in Vermont is
Pennies.
yeah, pennies, right?
So
Yes.
are all women able to go out in Maine and hold jobs?
If
It
they're in
seems
the
like it,
reentry
any-
unit,
Beg pardon?
if they're in the reentry unit,
Right, if they're in the re-entry unit, they can go outside the facility and work. Yes, correct. It's a minimum security setup, and they go into the community to work. Yes,
80% of Vermont's women in prison are in for nonviolent offenses.
yes, correct. And presently, 50% of them are detainees,
Right.
we learned, which is really the Department of Corrections has not been able to satisfactorily explain why that is when men detainees make up considerably fewer of the prison makeup at this point.
I'm not surprised. I think you need to get tougher with the Commission on Women in prison.
What's the detainee? Detained from what?
They didn't get their
Detainee
day in
is-
court yet.
Well, they've been charged and they are being held for lack of bail. So they're being detained prior to their trial.
Oh, okay.
So they have not
And
been
most of them
adjudicated.
don't even get a trial. They do a plea deal.
Well, yes, that's a majority of cases are settled with plea agreements. Yes.
Did you have more of a question, Diane?
Well, I didn't totally understand everything that's been discussed. The social bond contract seems like it would apply to numerous situations besides incarceration, right?
It is. Like I said, 13 states, the last time I looked at it, it was probably before COVID. It could be used as funding any sort of social issue because it's a savings to society. So that's how it works.
Yeah, it sounds
It's
interesting.
great. It's a great, they did it in Massachusetts and an organization got like 3 million for 5 years to work with the prisoners when they get out.
Okay, so I was just wondering if people have to pay anything while they're in jail. I've heard in some cases they actually have to pay for room, board, and telephones is a major problem. So
They have to pay for telephones. They don't have to pay for room and board, but they have a commissary that they have to pay for any food that they get through it. They get 1 5-minute phone call a week is what I understand. I don't know what you might have a better understanding than I do, Chip.
That's not my understanding, but I couldn't say for certain that it's that restricted. I thought they had freer access to the phone. I know when I worked at the public defender's office, they could call my office anytime, but I guess maybe that was an attorney call that they were getting. But I didn't think they were restricted to that degree on their phone usage.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
They do have to pay. They do have to pay for the calls, though. They aren't free.
Correct.
And
Usually-
there are profit centers within the prison system because it's outside sources, like even the email. If I email them, I have to pay a quarter, and then I have to put a quarter in their account so they can email me back.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Wow.
I think that should be free.
Yeah, it
And-
should be. I agree.
And phone calls are sometimes, I don't know about in Vermont, but I just know here they're terribly expensive and the people are making a lot of money from them. So that's why I asked.
Well, calls from the correctional center are generally made collect. So that's what does make them very expensive. Yes.
I thought there was, that was in process of being changed to allow more phone calls, cheaper phone calls. But
Yeah, well, I mean, they can use phone cards. If they have someone on the outside that can give them a phone card, they can use those. But those who can't generally have to call collect. I don't know, again, I don't know what the restrictions may or may not be as far as phone calls go.
Well, could you say to what degree there's a likelihood of something, progressive actually passing, since we have this opportunity with lots of Democrats and progressives as a majority, because there are details to this whole thing. For example, the Free Her group are working with to try to get the architects to refuse to offer their talents to build a new prison. And to what degree that can be effective, that would be interesting.
I mean, that you're always going to find architects to build the prison. It's got a big price tag, you
The
know?
design of prison, yeah. So the 15-bed secure juvenile facility that's just being finished up in Essex, Vermont, had a price tag of about $13 million, I guess, and that was fairly reasonable. But again, that is the same approach with juveniles. It is a dormitory type setup. The rooms are not locked. And the facility is secure, and they have a common kitchen area. They can actually cook their own food. There's a gym. There's a common area, two common areas actually in it. And it's a very soft approach that we're trying to take with juveniles that need to be secured at this time for one reason or another, and trying to reach them in a way that we were not able to when we had Woodside Juvenile Correctional Facility, which was a jail. It had sliding locked metal doors, and it had concrete walls or cinder block walls, and there was just no mistaking it. It was a jail. So this again is a much different facility. It looks like a kind of a sprawling home from the outside. It's very comfortable. There's a nice yard. There are raised beds that they're going to start gardening in the spring, and we have great hopes that this will be a much more effective way to treat our juveniles than it was by locking them up in the Woodside Correctional Facility.
I worked against a Woodside, what was it, 2 or 3 decades ago, along with a fabulous woman from Vermont named Faye Honey Knopf,
Yes.
Knapp, who wrote the book, Abolition of Prisons. Did you know her, Chip?
I know of her. Yes, I do. I recognize that name.
Yeah, she had a big impact on me, and I think on other Vermonters at that time. She was a Quaker minister in prisons. There aren't many of those, but she was adamant. So any other questions of Chip, or we could move into the next step of things, which is if each of you will tell what's going on in your country in terms of incarceration. And it might be interesting for Chip to find out California and down south where you all come from. Who would like to start? All right, I see George Friday.
Yes, you do. My country, that's pretty hilarious. And now the term down south, that's also kind of wild.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sitting low. It's where my office chair is these days, but I want to give some respect to Fairfax, Virginia, and Diane, because George Mason University is the home of a really important project that Samantha knows more about, Reimagining America Project, and Track and Wrap. So that's a partner with the Poor People's Campaign. And here in the Southern Piedmont branch, we partner with the Poor People's Campaign, and through that get connections to community work. We're growing. The Poor People's Campaign has to grow its coordinating committee. And I met over the weekend a woman I'm excited about connecting to. Her name is Sangria, which is wild. Sangria Noble. Statewide, luckily, I think this is a great thing for North Carolina. We have an organization called the Second Chance Alliance. And North Carolina has 5 offices or chapters of that alliance, and they work with families who are incarcerated or are soon to be incarcerated, and they provide expungement services. I'm really excited about that, and really thankful to the Columbus, Georgia Fannie Lou Hamer branch for modeling the best practices around that. I was also contacted today by Michelle Wim, and I know Michelle or met Michelle through US Social Forum work years and years ago. And she remembered some work I did in Baltimore around restorative justice with young people, and got in touch with me about that because she's part of, and now will be in Charlotte, something called Alternatives. And they phrase it in a really cool way so it looks good on their little logo, Alternatives. And now they're in Charlotte. So that's 2 potential partners for our WILF ending mass incarceration work, and I'm excited about it. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Sam, but when and if you do an update, you can talk about Reimagining America. And I took 3 minutes. It would be great if we take 3 to 5 each branch, so we're ending on time. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, Diane?
Okay, well, you said country. So I just came back from Nicaragua not that long ago, and it's a real problem because I think all of you probably read that that 222 prisoners were freed and brought to the United States, brought to Dulles Airport from Managua, and that I read this article. It makes it sound like Nicaragua is horrendous. She wrote, the writer said it was comparable to North Korea, and yet when I was there was so much good stuff happening, and it was advancing so much. So they're using this prisoner thing as basically a terrible, as a way to put down the entire country. So it's a real problem. There's a bishop there, Bishop Alvarez, who was just sentenced to 26 years in prison last week. So it's very challenging for me to really stand up and support Nicaragua when things like this are happening. And I think it's basically the prison that people mostly condemn the Sandinistas for right now. So this is a big issue. I mean, I'm just thought I'd mention that.
Well, that's fascinating that that Ortega is releasing all those prisoners. I don't quite know the story there. Do you know why?
I'm sorry, I have a phone call, but the vice president just called up and asked the United States to work something out, and so they did. But anyway.
Huh. Oh, okay. Good. All right. And do you want to tell anything more about your state? What's going on in your state, Diane?
So I don't really know that much. I mean, the ACLU has been very involved, but like I said, I was in Quebec and then Nicaragua, and I'm just not, I haven't been keeping up with what's happening in Virginia.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, maybe Joan Goddard, what's going on in California? At one time, they released a lot of prisoners, didn't they? Did that work out?
I'm sorry, I don't know. Hopefully Philip knows, and I'm going to be learning a lot by finding out what's going on. I did do some checking of some work that had been done last fall, but I have not, unfortunately. I'm going to have to get prepared for the next meeting, which will be good because then I can share it with other people here too. So I'm sorry. But Philip may have some more information because he's California too. So it makes sense to go ahead with him if he can talk now. Can't
Yeah.
always talk when he's driving around on his work.
Well, I will say this. We had a woman who was murdered in a robbery this past week, and she passed away. And her family has asked the district attorney in Alameda County not to prosecute the assailants if they're caught in the regular fashion, but to try to apply restorative justice when dealing with the assailants. Once the Alameda County, who is new, said that they would try to respect the family's wishes, which is an extraordinary step in the prosecution of anyone. And that's a very, very recent. Like I said, this has all happened in the last week.
Wow.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Good point.
Mhm. Okay, Teresa, I see your hand is up.
Well, it's up because I do want to report on Georgia since we're going around state by state.
Yes, good.
George lifted up the fact that we had an expungement event here at our Human Rights Conference, the second annual Fannie Lou Hamer Branch Human Rights Conference. We partnered with the Solicitor General and the ADA over expungements. They actually came to our conference, and the Georgia Justice Project, one of our partners, brought in 3 lawyers to talk with those of us who brought our records. 10 years ago, which is why I'm kind of having a little bit of PTSD. On February the 2nd, 10 years ago, the police tricked their way into my apartment, put me in handcuffs, and charged me with calling 911 too much and escape from the hospital. And so it was interesting because when I went to court on April 4th of that year, the Solicitor General, when I explained to her what happened, she said, "Don't worry about it, I'm dropping the charges." She did. I got back my $750 I had paid to bond myself out. But more importantly, people should know if you've ever been arrested, that stuff stays on your record forever. When she said she dropped the charges, I thought that meant it went away. But when I went to the police department, I was able to get my records with my mugshot and everything. So at the expungement event on Human Rights Day, December 10th, she said, "Teresa, give me your records." And within 9 days, I got a letter from the court signed by a judge saying my records were sealed. And that's very important because when I applied for a new apartment, they don't just do a credit check, they do a background check. So when they did a background check, they couldn't see anything because those records were sealed. And Georgia is one of, I think, only 14 states that has banned the box. The governor, Republican governor, by the way, Robin, because I don't think much of the Democrats. I'm actually in the Green Party. The Democrats have sold us down the river every chance they get. But at any rate, the Republican governor came to the conclusion that mass incarceration is not sustainable. You're spending more for prisoners for a bed and 3 meals than you do on students for education. So he signed an executive order that year to ban the box. So people who apply for jobs with the state of Georgia, nobody asks them about their arrest records. And so those are the important things that I think we have to continue to lift up. And in Georgia, we're in the middle of the state legislature where they're passing a budget. And so the budget is taking on lots of things. And of course, mass incarceration being one of them. We have the state of Georgia run 25 work camps. Georgia was always the penal colony of
Really?
the 13 colonies. And the whole point is, Robin, that we have got to see this work with a racial lens. I think less than 1% or about 1% of people in Vermont are Black. but all across down south and everywhere else, the majority of people who are in these prisons, and probably true in Vermont as well. I talk to people in Idaho, and even though it's a very white state, guess where the Black people are, and guess who's in the prisons? And we have got to, and of course, I'll be back next month, and we will continue to look at this work through a racial justice lens. Over.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Cheryl, you dealt with the ratio in the women's prison. What would you say that is for Black women? Oops, you're muted now.
We have so few. I mean, it's still we have more BIPOC population in the prison compared to outside, but of the 17 that applied for our program, I guess 2 one was Native and the other one maybe had some Latino descent. And I guess there was another one that has some Black in her background. Yeah. But you know, I don't know how to be politically correct because it was hard for me to tell.
Yeah.
You know, it's not obvious in the name or in color.
Well, I mean, one of the things, and maybe Chip can tell us, but we have a new person on, Effia. Hi, Effia. Could you introduce yourself?
Before you do that, I just wanted to say that our issue is poverty. We might not have BIPOC, but it's poverty. That 95% of the women in prison are from living in poverty, and generational poverty and generational incarceration. So that's our issue.
Yeah,
Correct. That is.
very important. Yeah.
was-
Effia, could you introduce yourself? Hello, hello. Well, maybe she'll come on a little later. What were you about to say, Chip? And I see you're muted also.
Yes, I just wanted to comment, when I was working at the public defender system, one day in Newport Court, I came across the 3rd generation of the same family that we had represented. His
Wow.
father and his grandfather alike, and he thought that was really cool that he was in court. It's a fine example of what you say, Cheryl. It's just generational poverty and contact with criminal justice system is really one of the difficulties we have here.
And you know, I have a housekeeper, and her father, his second wife, finally took him to court for domestic violence. So he did 15 years, but the other 2 wives did not. His crimes are absolutely horrific, what he's done to his daughters and granddaughters. And so I asked my housekeeper, I said, how many offspring from your one father? There's 30. And of that 30, 25% have committed suicide or are addicts.
Wow.
So you don't have to have that many bad actors in a small state.
That is a horrible statistic.
That was just my housekeeper.
But at least he was in prison for 15 years.
Yeah, but then he got out and did a robbery. I mean, I don't have anything good to say about him, but anyway, I'll get off.
Okay, well, we only have 9 minutes more if we want to abide by Teresa's regulation. I have 2 questions for Chip. One is, why can't we bring the prisoners back home from out of state? These are all male prisoners. Aren't there
Yes.
still a huge bunch are out there?
There's about 100 inmates out of state in Mississippi currently. You know what, Robin, is an interesting fact that I found out. A large number of them want to be there.
Why?
They have their own unit. I think that there is a little bit more freedom down there in that unit that they're in, and Commissioner of Corrections tells us that they have requests for, but there, of course, the criteria to go to Mississippi is that you have to have a long-term sentence without any programming. So that's the criteria that people are sent on. And I guess statistically, the Commissioner of Corrections tells us that programming, if you've got a 20-year sentence, programming on at the onset of that sentence is not particularly effective. So the method that they use here is that they will wait till a year or two prior to their eligibility for parole or their maximum sentence release, and they'll bring them back for programming at that time. But we're working on it. It just not enough room to do it. And right now, staffing shortages is playing into that as well, because I think the St. Albans Correctional Facility has 2 wings that are shut down because they're unable to staff them. So those are beds right there that could be used for some of these out-of-state prisoners, but they don't have the staff to manage these units. So the combination of both of them.
Offer higher wages?
Well, I made that suggestion just last week to the Commissioner of Corrections. They are really having a hard time finding someone. But I said, if you were to offer $60,000 or $70,000 annual salary, I think you would probably do a better job at attracting help into those difficult positions. And he agreed. And also, again, a softer approach, because staff as well as inmates are benefit from having a more relaxed atmosphere, less confrontation, less hassles, and especially if you're working long hours. So, the fact is that we are looking at that. I volunteered to go to Norway to see their prison system, but no one was interested in sending me.
So Chip, there are some Pennsylvania went to Norway, and they're doing a trial program right now. And
I heard that they did.
The commissioner from Oregon went. Down there working with them. But the problem with the prison is the culture. You can ask them, offer them 100,000. They don't want to be in that violent, abusive, oppressive culture.
Well, that's why I said, I think if you link that with
that's right.
a model such as Norway might use,
that's
where
right.
you don't have that confrontive atmosphere and that restrictive atmosphere, that both inmates and staff would benefit as a result of that, including better salaries. So I think that would accommodate some recruitment and help with these staff shortages that they can't seem to reconcile.
I agree with you.
Okay, so we're coming up towards the end here. I just have one more question for Chip, and that's reference of what you mentioned in your email to me about a woman who's becoming a judge who is does not have progressive perspective on some of the decisions that she will be judging in. Could you give us more about that? Is there anything we could do to
Well, I think it was a little bit late, because I heard the other day that the Senate confirmed her as a judge. So we'll see how she does. Excuse me. I sit on the Judicial Retention Committee. So every 6 years, every judge in Vermont has to be reviewed in order to be retained in their position. So we're in the middle of that, which has me really extremely busy right now. But we interviewed the 5 Supreme Court justices last Wednesday, and we're doing 5 Superior Court justices. So they circulate an anonymous survey amongst the attorneys and the litigants and the court staff, and they are free to make comments about their opinions on these judges. We take comments from them. We have a public hearing. And so we have found some judges that kind of squeaked by because of some really bad reports from the community. So we'll see how she does if I'm around for her first retention hearing.
Wow. Okay, so any other comments or thoughts? And Efia Nwagaza, do you want to say hello and goodbye? I guess not. Okay. Well, in that case, I just want to really thank Chip, and I'm sorry that there wasn't anyone active from Free Her. Have some of you from the other states met up with this group, Free Her, part of the National Council Against Incarceration of Women? I mean, they're very active in New England, apparently, in Massachusetts and now Vermont, and I think Maine and New Hampshire, but I don't know whether they are out west, but they held a very powerful town meeting just last week. I don't know whether you got wind of that, Chip, but had a number of good speakers. One, a woman who had been incarcerated, who told of her experience. So
I hadn't heard about this, Robin, until you sent the email a couple of weeks ago about the rally that happened last week.
Yeah.
I do want to throw out for folks to remember that the next meeting is March 13th. Next month is March 13th.
Okay, but Joan, you met up with the Free Her people recently, didn't you? Because you gave them my number.
I don't think so. I would have been glad to, but I don't remember doing that. So maybe it was someone else.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I can't help.
Okay, well, anyway, I think we've gotten a lot of interesting information here, and we need to really watch what's going on. How do we find out how things are progressing, for example, in your subcommittee? Chip, do we just go online and see the notes of the latest session of the
Yeah, if you go to Corrections and to the House site and Corrections and Institutions Committee, you can see what testimony we are taking day to day. The Commissioner of Corrections has been in multiple times so far, and his staff. And so we've heard about his budget, his staffing recruitment issues. I mean, all of this stuff comes about. Plus, we have had a lot of conversation about the new women's reentry program that we plan to put into effect, and just in general, trying to make sense of folks that are incarcerated and make it a little bit better for them being in. So yeah, there'll be a daily navigation chart in there, and you can just open up each day of the week and take a look at who we met with that day and what we discussed.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Thank you. Yeah, Diane.
So I thought it was interesting when I looked up Free Her, it said it was the 6 New England states that they were working at. And then when I looked up GMU Reimagining America project, I don't understand how GMU is working with Charlotte. I mean, they picked one city and it's not Fairfax, Virginia. It's in a different
My guess is that
state.
they got a grant and they picked a place to work in based on the funding. I only say that because I remember getting federal funding for projects in 13 states, and random Chatham County, North Carolina got one, a couple in California, some in Florida, and they were doing juvenile justice related things. It could be the same kind of funding stream. I don't have any idea
Yeah.
at all, and I was really surprised that it was George
Yeah.
Mason University in Fairfax,
Well,
Virginia.
I love George Mason. I'm on 2 boards there, and yeah, it's a love of my life, college. Anyway,
All right, well, there's lots of threads to follow up here and bring them to the next meeting next month. And again, thank you so much, Chip. And our hour is over. And so I say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Nice to meet you all. Thanks for bringing me up to date from around the country. I really
well,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. Thank you for coming.
Yes.